You are listening to Unified Through Chronic and Mental Illness with your hosts, Angie Roberts and Kimberly Murphy. Please be advised that some of the topics of this podcast can be triggering and sensitive in nature.
Some estimates suggest that over 90% of the American population demonstrates codependent behavior.
Hey Spoonies, mental health warriors, our supporters and friends. Welcome to another episode of Unified. I'm Kimberly Murphy here with Angie Roberts.
Hey, y'all.
And today we're talking about codependency. Now, there's a lot of terms that are getting flung around on the internet with friends, talking about situations we've been in, like, oh my God, he's a narcissist, because they didn't get along, or, oh, she's so toxic, right, because they didn't agree on something, or, saying that somebody's needy because, they're in a relationship where somebody pays attention and is always involved. So codependency is often misunderstood. It's used in a way that is not appropriate. Codependency is actually a lot like relationship addiction. That's actually what it is, where it's where it's like one-sided or an abusive relationship. Unlike interdependence, which people actively choose how they're going to be in the relationship while also maintaining their sense of self. Right. And they have clear, healthy boundaries and clear communication. So codependency is not actually even mentioned as a mental health disorder.
Right, it's not part of the DSM-5, right?
Yeah, but a lot of people with borderline personality disorder commonly have it.
Yeah, and I also heard, it goes along with personality disorders, period.
Right.
Kind of, that's what I heard.
Right, and the other thing is that codependent people are attracted to type B personalities. So I found that really interesting, right? But the mental health disorder that is actually what everyone calls codependent is dependent personality disorder, but that's not what we're talking about today. Right. Yeah, I just wanted to mention, though, that when you're in a healthy relationship, there is an element of, giving of self. And I think we've become such an independent society where it's like, I don't need you. And if you do need somebody, people tend to see that as a negative. I've been with my husband for 24 years. We need each other. Right. You know what I'm saying? So when we go through this, I want people to keep in mind that we're talking about an imbalance. We're talking about one person who gives, the other person who takes, and where it's not an equal relationship, where there's not give and take. So I know you did a lot of research on this, Angie. What stood out to you?
I thought it was interesting that, of course, it's a learned behavior that can be passed down in families. The more you see, the more you're likely to do.
That makes sense, yeah.
Right.
My mom's severely codependent.
And like you said, it affects the ability for healthy, mutually satisfying relationships. It's usually kind of one-sided. It's emotionally destructive, and it can be a form of abuse.
Somebody posted something on Twitter, which I just want to say because it fits right here. They said codependency is a circular relationship where one person needs the other person, who in turn needs to be needed. The codependent person, known as the giver, feels worthless unless they are needed by and making sacrifices for the enabler, otherwise known as the taker. So the enabler is the taker, which I think a lot of people get that backwards.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I found that really interesting.
So it affects everybody pretty much, your parents, spouse, siblings, friends, coworkers, even with persons with alcohol or drug abuse.
Isn't that where the term came up, was with in the 1980s with the drug and alcohol abuse like the 12-step programs came up with the
Right.
term codependency, didn't they? That's pretty much where it got popular, right?
Um, I didn't read that, but if you read that,
I
then
think I
that's
saw
right.
that. Yeah, I think I saw that somewhere where it, don't quote me, but I do believe I saw that somewhere where it started with Alcoholics Anonymous. So I found that
Yeah,
interesting
I
too.
can see how that would happen because as we're going to get on into this, we're going to talk about how codependency and uh, alcohol and drugs kind of go together.
Right. Yeah.
So, codependent people behave a certain way. They have like low self esteem. They find it hard to be themselves. They feel better through alcohol, drugs, or nicotine, and they often become addicted, which is really sad.
Really? Okay. That's
Um,
interesting to me because I always figure the person they're in the relationship with, again, it's reversed, but I see a lot of enabling with women who have spouses
right,
that are addicted to alcohol or drugs. So,
right,
yeah.
right. Well, they're just, when you hit a certain point, you try to feel better through a
Yeah,
lot of
that
bad
makes
things.
sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Right.
Right. Some of them develop also like compulsive disorders like workaholism, gambling, or even random sexual acts,
Promiscuous. Yeah.
promiscuity, or yeah.
Right. Now, I know when I was younger, because I was raised in a family of codependent people, or at least my mom, I kind of acted out in those ways as an older teenager,
Right.
looking for a place to fit. And I think it does make sense because the more I gave, and the more I felt needed, the more I had self-esteem. So my self-esteem was outside of myself. I needed that
Right.
validation, uh, and that's not a good place to be. That's definitely codependent behavior.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's hard though when you see it so much as a child, then it's you definitely kind of do what your parents do.
Yeah, and you don't realize until you leave your home that it isn't really that way. Like I was surprised to see how other families actually were.
Mm.
So,
Right.
you know what I mean? So, yeah, you believe your parents, of course. So, what are some of
Of
the
course.
characteristics that you found out? I know that there's like a list of characteristics. Now, people can have some of these, and it doesn't mean you're codependent, but a lot of these together,
Oh, right.
you might think, oh, okay, maybe I have a problem with this.
Right. Um, the first one, an exaggerated sense of responsibility for actions of others. You take responsibility for what other people do.
Mhm. My
And
mom was doing that with my son, so yeah.
yeah, you can't take a you can't take responsibility for someone else's actions.
Right.
So
Right. And
that
then
is
to believe that everything happens because of you.
you. Right.
Yeah, that's the exaggerated sense of responsibility, I think. My
Right.
mom is famous for that. Uh-huh.
Right. A tendency to confuse love and pity with a tendency to love people they can pity and rescue. Now, this is where the loving the
Alcoholic.
alcoholic, the drug addict, the narcissist, the whatever
Hmm.
comes in because you can I feel so sorry for this person. Let me rescue them.
Yeah, because you feel like that gives you such a great self-esteem, and it feels good to be needed. So, yeah.
But you can't rescue someone, guys, that
No,
doesn't want to be rescued.
no, you can't, unfortunately. And your love is never enough. Like there's a lot of women who think if I love this person enough, they'll change,
Right.
but that it never works that way, guys. They have to do it for themselves.
Definitely.
Hmm.
A tendency to do more than their share all the time. Um, I think that's kind of in a people pleasing
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
So, yeah, a tendency to become hurt when people don't recognize their efforts. Now, a lot of us do this, so that doesn't mean we're codependent. Kim, like Kimberly said, all of these, just seeing one or two in yourself does not mean that you're codependent.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we can all relate to a lot of these to some extent.
Right. I think so too.
Hmm.
An unhealthy dependency on relationships. The
Mm.
codependent will do anything to hold on to a relationship to avoid feeling of abandonment.
Now, can I say something here?
Yes,
On
please.
one of my relationships that I had before my husband, this was me. This was me. Like this guy was so toxic, like for real, and abusive. And I would do anything to try to gain his love and affection and his validate, like again, the validation. Uh,
Right.
I would have done anything, anything. And all those times, like he wouldn't show up and I wouldn't know where he was all night, I felt completely alone and abandoned. And that would
Hmm.
just reinforce the whole situation. Like when he came back and I'm getting all this affection, it just reinforced this whole cycle of codependency. So I can totally relate to that one.
Right.
Hmm.
Um, I'm sorry that you went through that, by the way.
Thank you. I'm glad I got out. It took a while. And for anybody out there who's going through this right now, I'm going to say that it took a good 6 months to a year for that fog to lift.
Mm.
You really need to get help and you really need to take the time. You have to allow the time because you're still bonded to that person even if you leave. So you just need to give yourself some time.
That's yeah, and that's kind of in any relationship too, because I've seen people relationship hop so much that
Hmm.
you really need to give yourself time between those relationships
You got
to
to grieve it.
figure it out, grieve
Yeah.
it, yeah,
Yeah.
and figure out like what was your responsibility, what was their responsibility, what did you do, what can you change. Anyway, sorry.
That's okay though, because I think that's important because a lot of people put the
Excuse me.
responsibility onto other people and they don't think about their part in it. They only think about what the other person didn't do or did do. So I
Yeah,
think that's really important. Otherwise, how are you going to learn and grow and become better in your next relationship?
so true.
Hmm.
An extreme need for approval and recognition.
Yeah.
So they need you to tell them that you love them. They need you to tell them that you care. They need to be recognized for what they do. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing that. And if not, then they don't feel adequate.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
not that they get mad, it's just that they just don't feel
They don't feel
adequate.
and they don't feel important to you.
Right,
So they may find that somewhere else, but uh, they really do need that approval and recognition.
right.
Yeah.
And here's one that I went through for a long time, a sense of guilt when asserting themselves.
Ah,
I
this is
used
a
to
good
feel,
one.
yeah, I used to feel so guilty when I would stand up for myself. And now I'm just like, whatever. That's how I am.
That's like when we talked about boundaries, because if you're in a
Yeah,
situation where you're not allowed to voice yourself, your who you are and how you feel, asserting yourself can feel like you're crossing a boundary and it doesn't feel
right,
good. Yeah. So learning how to assert yourself and not feel guilty is something that we all need to do.
definitely. Because it's an important, it's just important to be
Hmm.
able to do that for yourself.
Exactly.
A compelling need to control others. This
Now,
is
see, this one
very
I didn't
codependent.
understand. I don't understand that one because I always feel like the codependent enabler is being controlled by the other person, but I guess they are controlling other people because they're kind of manipulating the situation.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Hmm.
Is that they can be manipulative, um, to a point where they're crying or upset and trying to get the other person not to leave and or
I have a
whatever.
really good example, and you, I have a friendship that went through. I went through this with somebody, and yeah, they were very manipulative. There was always a crisis, and I always had to be there. And this person always
Right.
needed reassurance, so I felt very controlled, in
Yeah.
that situation, and it took me a while to end that. But yeah, I guess I do really understand that because I just went through that, and it's not a good place to be when somebody is controlling you with
No.
those types of things or with money, like they buy you stuff or like I said, there's always a crisis and they're always giving to you. So they're like, well, I did this for you.
Right.
And then you feel guilty. And then you feel
I
guilty.
did this for you, or I was there for you when, or
And really, when you sit down and you think about it, you're the one that's always been there. So
right.
I think I wonder if a lot of codependent people match up with each other.
Oh Lord.
That's a good question for everyone out
didn't.
there.
Yeah.
That's a good question, right?
That is a good question. I didn't
Mhm.
research that.
Yeah,
That could be interesting.
right.
So a lack of lack of trust in self, in others,
Hmm.
or in themselves.
Yep.
Um,
They don't trust their own judgment. That's why they need
right,
validation.
right.
But then
They
they don't
have
trust you either. So,
right, they don't.
so
So it's just yes,
that's where the
it's hard.
constant validation is. That's why they're constantly needing your approval. Yeah, because they don't trust you. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust, in general. They don't know how to trust.
Right. That's sad.
It is
So
sad. It is very
it's a
sad.
scary, it has to be a very scary place to be.
I imagine they feel very lonely.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that was, yeah. Next one, fear of being abandoned or alone. Fear of being abandoned by the person they're with now or being alone forever. Uh, see, I have that.
Yeah, I was
So
just going to say
I
that
kind of understand that.
I think a lot of people have a fear of abandonment that have been in unhealthy households growing
Right.
up. So I know I do. That's something that I've struggled with and had to have therapy for.
Right.
Yeah. So
And then a fear of being alone, like if you've been alone for a long time, sometimes you just feel like you're going to be alone forever. And then
so
that's
you,
not necessarily true.
so you grab onto the first person, and it's not always a good, healthy situation.
No, you can grab onto them and try to make them who you want them to be, and that's
Right.
not going to work out.
Right. Exactly. I think a lot of people are doing that. And
I do too.
it's that whole independent thing again.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of lack of compromise in relationships these days, or at least
But
what we're seeing in social media.
right.
Yeah.
They have difficulty identifying their feelings,
Hmm.
rigidity and difficulty adjusting to change.
That makes sense.
Mhm. Problems with intimacy and boundaries.
That's a huge one.
Yes, because they have no boundaries.
They will cross the line just to feel that togetherness, that connection.
And then they have no boundaries for themselves, and they let everybody cross their lines too for
Exactly.
the same reason that you just said. So,
Right. Just for that connection, to hopefully get that connection.
right.
Yeah.
Here's the one that kind of surprised me: chronic anger.
Yeah, that surprises me too. However, the person I was just talking about had explosive behavior sometimes.
Hmm,
And it
hmm.
was in response to that difficulty with trusting and that lack of, connection and a fear of being left. So I
I wonder if
think
that,
I think that's partially where it comes from.
yeah, I don't know if they're agitated a lot in the kind of,
Well, I
I
can
could,
imagine it would be easy to be triggered.
right?
If you have a
I could,
history with your family. I know a girl who her father was always putting her down and saying she was all these horrible names and that she was stupid and things like that. So when she was in a situation where even if nobody said it, she just felt like that, like people were thinking she was stupid. Her anger would just go out of nowhere really fast.
right.
So it could be a trigger. Like you said, a lot of these people grow up in bad situations. So
That, and a lot of anxiety can lead to anger.
that's true.
So
Yeah,
feelings of anger. So I wonder if that plays into that at all.
I'm sure it does.
The next one is lying and dishonesty.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's to please the other person. They won't always be honest.
right, exactly. They're gonna just tell you
What
or
they
tell the
think
other person
you want
whatever.
to hear.
Yeah, exactly.
People that don't have good boundaries tend to do this a lot because again, they want to tell that person what they think that person wants to hear, and they want to
Right.
people please. So all of this goes together. Um, the first step to creating boundaries is to be honest with yourself. Be
Yeah,
honest with yourself. Honestly, like you have to be honest with yourself. And sometimes that takes a lot of work. So,
that does take a lot of work.
mhm.
It can be it can be grueling sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They also
Especially if you grow up in a family where your family does not believe that you have a voice, that you're taught that you
right,
don't have a voice. So, you know, that can also lead to like issues with communication. They don't
right,
know how to communicate well because they've never had the option to do that. And then they fall into this horrible codependent pattern. And a lot of them don't want to talk about the truth. If you put the truth in their face, they're going to do everything they can to dodge it.
right. Yeah, yeah. They don't want. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that happening.
Well, because they feel, I think it's because they feel very insecure.
Right,
So when you're confronting them with something, it feels different for them than, it would somebody who's not codependent can just say, okay, I hear what you're saying. Um, they tend to, it's really big to them.
right. They also have difficulty making decisions,
Hmm.
which is me. I don't know what I want to eat when you ask me, where do you want to go to eat?
Hmm.
It's a horrible question.
I think it's worse
But
with codependence though, because they're
oh,
like,
definitely.
they want somebody else to make the decisions for them. That's part of it. Um,
Right. So they have, right.
so they don't know how to think for them. See, this is so sad to me because I can see my mom in a lot of this. She's getting so much better. I have to say that. But when I was younger, she had a lot of these issues. And when you're not allowed to make decisions in your family, and then
Mhm.
you go out into the world, uh, it's hard for you to make decisions for yourself. It's hard for you if you are dishonest. It's hard for you if you have poor communication to really make those decisions. So you just want somebody else to do it,
Yeah.
at least in her case.
It can be a lot easier sometimes.
Right. And it also is like if somebody else is making decisions for me and I do a good job,
Right.
then they must really they're going to like me a lot. So it's another way to get that validation that these people are seeking so desperately, which is sad. And I'm only speaking because I know I've been here. So I'm not picking on anybody. My mom and I both have had issues with this. So
I've had issues with codependency before too. So
yeah, I think
I can, it's a long road out.
it is.
It's a long road out. DBT really helped. Dialectical behavioral therapy, if you haven't heard of it, it really helped to
Kind of
get
break out of these
myself into shape.
patterns. Yeah.
Yeah, because it deals with the here and now and reality and reality acceptance and different
So
things like that.
I know that speaking of that, I know that there are some things that we can sort of ask ourselves to see if maybe to identify if we're codependent or not.
Right. So, do you keep quiet to avoid arguments?
I think
How
a lot of women do that though.
a lot of
Yeah.
women do that.
Hmm.
I do that to a certain extent with certain people, but I I'll keep quiet when I'm mad and then usually talk about something later
I
when
think
I'm
that's healthy though, what you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah, that's healthy. I think this is more
And then
like, do you
sometimes
keep quiet is you're keeping the important
all
truth
the
to yourself.
time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you always worried about others' opinions of you? That
Yeah.
can be
That can be crippling.
it can.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever lived with someone with a drug or alcohol problem? Have you ever lived with someone who hits or belittles you? Are you, oh, excuse me, are the opinions of others more important than your own?
Mm.
That's really I hate that for other people because I am such an opinionated person and I am very strong in my opinions.
Mhm.
And I really hate that for somebody else. I want everybody to be strong in what they're talking about and
Yeah, and here, like
knowledgeable and,
this is like the whole situation where they don't trust themselves. They don't trust their own judgment.
right.
Yeah,
They don't at all.
and I think that's where that comes from. So, um, yeah, that's really sad. That is really a sad place to be
It is.
because other people's opinions are not going to be good most of the time.
Right. And they're not more important than your own.
Right. And
Don't make
if you're with
others more.
somebody that has a drug or alcohol problem or who is abusive,
Oh, definitely.
you don't want them making decisions for you and their opinion, meaning more than yours. But
Right.
sadly, that's what happens a lot. So I apologize. I didn't mean to talk over you.
Oh no. Did you?
A little bit.
Never.
We both have
Um
strong opinions about this subject.
right. Do you have difficulty adjusting to change at work or home?
Mhm.
Do you feel rejected when significant others spend time with friends?
Mm.
Not jealous, rejected.
Now, there's a person I know, we'll just put it that way, who always felt rejected if I
Yeah.
spent time with other people. That's a huge red flag. Huge
Yeah.
red flag. If you feel that way, or if you're with somebody that expresses that they feel that way to you, I think that would be a huge red flag no matter what. So
Yeah, you kind of need to get out of there.
yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Um, do you doubt your own ability to be who you want to be? That's also another not believing in yourself and
Not knowing who you are.
not knowing who you are, right? And if you answered um yes to that question, just think about taking some self-care time and time for some self-reflection and learning who you are again.
Yeah,
Because
and
it's
if you
very
can't,
important to know who you are
it is. And if you can't, if you
or
find
who
that
you want to be.
if you
Right.
find that you're trying to do that and you still can't, that's a therapist is really helpful in kind of
Yes.
guiding you through that.
Yes, I love my therapist. They're
I
always
love
so
mine too.
helpful.
I love mine too. I have a new one and she's fabulous. So
Oh, hey guys, if you guys hear some background noise, it's it's snowing like crazy up here, and I really can't help but to pick up the snow plows.
we weren't
So,
even sure if we were going to be able to do the podcast tonight because
right.
they are getting so much snow up there. I'm glad that
Yeah,
you guys
it's
have
fine.
power. So that's the important
Yeah,
thing.
it's not as bad as they said it was going to be, but it wasn't supposed to snow this long today, I don't think. So, it's interesting.
Right.
Okay. Back to our subject. Have you ever felt inadequate? Which makes me kind of wonder because hasn't everybody?
I know. I was just going to say that. I mean, I think we've all felt inadequate at some point.
But maybe they mean all the time.
Probably
They say do you ever, but
most of the
have you
time.
ever? But
Most of the time.
I would
Yeah.
think most of the time you feel inadequate.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you feel like a bad person when you make a mistake? I do.
Do you?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
Matters what the mistake is, I guess.
That's true. That's very true. I guess looking at it from a relationship point of view, yeah, I would feel like a bad person if I made a mistake with certain people. So,
Right. The
yeah.
last 3 days I've been called a bad mommy, so I don't know.
Who's the judge on that though?
Yeah.
A 4-year-old's making that decision. It
Yeah,
doesn't
I'm
count.
trying to brush your hair or tell you no, I'm a bad mommy. Okay.
Of course.
Of course I am.
Mhm.
Like, okay, whatever. Um, do you have difficulty taking compliments or gifts? I used to I used to have the biggest problem with taking compliments.
Oh, me
Like
too.
I couldn't, it would make me very uncomfortable if someone said, "Oh, you're so beautiful." And
Yeah.
I'd be like,
And the gift thing, like I would always give gifts, but I always feel uneasy when I got one. Thank goodness I'm not that way anymore, but I don't know.
Right.
I felt like I didn't deserve to have it, I guess.
Aw,
Yeah.
that's sad.
So I'm glad that I'm over that because the give and take is really important. I don't give
Right.
gifts to people that don't give them to me. So I'm at the point where it's give and take. Give and take. It's give and take.
She is not. It's better to give than receive. She's
I
not.
am that kind of person. Yeah.
Yes, she is. I'm just kidding.
It's
Just
true
kidding.
though.
Yes, you're
I'd
right.
rather give. Yeah. But you're that way too.
Yeah, it's fun to give people stuff.
But I mean, I can understand this because if you're giving, and then the person doesn't appreciate it, uh, that can feel really horrible. We're in a support group
Right.
where a lot of people have kind of gone through that. And they've all gone through a period where they felt like they just weren't appreciated because we give lots of gifts to each other. The women are in a chronic illness group, so a lot of them can't even leave their home. So we're like, send a little happy mail to kind of brighten their day. And some of them would take advantage of the situation. Fortunately, those people are
Yeah.
not in our group anymore. But it's kind of like this, where we talked about too about feeling bad when someone
Right.
doesn't like recognize that you've been good to them. So I think we all have a lot of these feelings when it comes to people not recognizing us as the people that we believe we are.
That's true.
Hmm. Yeah.
Do you feel humiliation when your child or spouse makes a mistake? I'm sorry, I laughed because my son, if he gets in trouble at school, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so humiliated. But I think
Yeah.
that is a normal thing. I think this means like all the time, any little mistakes or um it's got to be because I know we all have to feel
Well, my mom
a
is
little
is one of these
embarrassed.
people where image meant everything to her because if
Yeah, my mom
everything
too. Yeah.
if everything looked good, she was kind of OCD, so the house had to be perfect and your clothes had to be perfect and what we did had to be perfect. If all of that was happening, then that meant her life was okay and she was okay. So anything that you did to stray outside of that, it really would humiliate her because she felt like it was a slight against her, that people were looking at her like it was her fault. um, Again, that's codependent behavior at its finest right there.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah,
i
that's
I
so
hated that.
sad.
I hated it. I wasn't allowed to be anything but what she wanted. So uh it's hard when
Right.
you're a kid growing up with that, and it's hard as an adult, I'm sure, to raise a child when you feel that way all the time. So
I can't only imagine because sometimes I feel that way.
mhm.
So I can't imagine feeling that way all the time.
Yeah, my mom was like so much anxiety, so much
Mm,
anxiety, which is sad.
it is.
Yeah.
Do you think people in your life would go downhill without your constant efforts? I used to be like this. If my friends weren't happy, I wasn't happy.
Right.
Life was not going to be good unless everybody was happy.
Yep.
And
Yep.
unless I made unless I did it, then
That makes sense.
it
Yeah.
wasn't going to get done.
Hmm.
So that was hard. Ooh, I'm glad I took that pressure off myself because that's a lot of pressure.
It is. It is. When you think that
Oh,
you're responsible for everybody, that's got to be really hard. What a horrible burden to bear.
I know, because you are the only one that is responsible for your happiness. So I can't be responsible for anybody else's happiness.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
was trying to be responsible for everybody's happiness that I knew that was
Hmm.
good to me, and oh goodness, that was a mess.
Right. Yeah. It can't go well. People have to take their own responsibility.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Do you frequently wish someone would help you get things done?
I don't know about this one. I don't know
You're a
about.
woman with a husband, and I'm a woman with a 4-year-old.
Yeah,
Let's see.
exactly. I mean, don't we
I don't know
all?
what to say about it,
I
but
don't either.
it's got to be
Well, again, I'm thinking about the person that has to
do everything
clean
all the
perfectly.
time.
Yeah, they won't let someone else do it because it won't get done right.
Right.
That kind of personality, I can see secretly wishing that someone would help them, but yeah, at the same time, they're not allowed to do it because they have to do it themselves in order to feel, I guess, productive and needed.
Right.
So,
I'm sure that that is very hard,
mhm.
just
Yeah,
to feel like that you have to do everything. So,
and you shouldn't do everything. Again, it's give and take in
no.
a relationship. It's cooperative. So if it's not, something's not right.
Right. Do you have difficulty talking to people in authority, such as the police or your boss?
Nope.
Nope, I don't either. But I could see how a codependent person would be shy to talk to someone in authority.
Yeah, and take that to heart too, whatever they're saying to them.
Right, because really you can't try to fix those people. So
Yeah,
they're trying to fix you.
exactly. Yeah. I'm sure that would make them feel very uneasy and insecure and just kind of trigger a lot of these behaviors and feelings that we've been talking about.
Right. Are you confused about who you are or where you are going with your life? Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes, but I've got a general outlook.
Yeah, I think we all have a general outlooks. I mean, some people are definitely more goal oriented, but I don't think this is what that's talking about. I think that if you know who you are, you know what you're not willing to do. You have a general idea of how you want to live. You have your morals and ideals and ideas. Uh,
Right.
Whereas somebody who is like having all of these issues that we're talking about doesn't. So,
Yeah.
mhm, yeah. So they may not know where they're going with their life. If you
No,
don't
they
know,
may be.
if you don't know who you are, how do you know where you're going?
Well, if you're trying to help everybody else, then it's really hard to, you know,
Hmm.
do that. And then the next one is you have trouble saying no when asked for help.
I still have trouble with this.
Yeah, I do too. Do you have trouble asking for help?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have so many things going at once that you can't do justice to any of them? No, I don't think so.
No, but I can see that the codependent people do because they're trying to
They're
make
trying
people
to fix
happy. They're
everybody.
people pleasing. They're fixing people. They're doing all this stuff. So yeah, you only have so much time to do so many things. And if
Right.
you're trying to do everything for everybody, you don't have enough time in a day and it's going to burn you out and you're going to feel worthless. Uh so yeah, you got to ask for help. That's hard though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
'Cause I don't want to
And
put anybody out. That's my problem. I don't want to put them out and have their be a burden to them. You know what I'm saying?
right.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I do know what you're saying.
that's why I don't
Well,
like to ask for help. But
right.
yeah.
Well, codependency is treated like through therapy. And because codependency is usually rooted in a person's childhood, treatment often involves exploration into the early childhood issues and their relationships to current destructive behavioral patterns.
Hmm.
So these kind of treatments include education, obviously, about your disease, or I mean, about your illness, excuse me. Um,
Experiential groups, I think, is another
yes.
one. Yeah.
What is experiential?
Well, I think that they like a group where you do a lot of role play. You can kind of work out by being in group types of behaviors that are actually healthy.
Oh, yeah, that
So
makes
I
sense.
think that's what it is.
Okay. Individual and group therapy,
Mhm.
through which codependents discover themselves and identify self-defeating behavior patterns. And the goal of this is to allow them to experience the full range of feelings again.
I'm sure that must be powerful.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to say DBT too.
DBT.
Angie says DBT too.
DBT or
Not that
CBT. Cognitive behavioral therapy is also very good for this.
Yeah, I would think a little bit of both.
I mean, they're pretty much, my therapist said they're pretty much under the same umbrella. So
they are.
A lot of the techniques overlap. So, if you can find either one, I know DBT can be harder to find, although it's becoming a lot easier than it used to be.
Much easier.
Mm-hmm. So where would you find help? I mean, if somebody has these issues and they say, oh my gosh, that's me. Where do I find these groups? How do I find, these things that you're talking about? Where do they go from there?
Well, you can go to CODA.org, and that's a recovery program for codependent people. It'll lead you in the right direction that you need to go. You can go to Psychology Today, ding ding, Psychology Today. To find a therapist in your area, you can always go to them.
Yeah,
and
they have a really cool website, so check that out, guys.
Yeah, they really do. And you can also look up all their stuff there.
Yeah, it's a great website. Yeah. It really is.
All the articles. And then recovery.org. It's a 12-step support group.
That's awesome. Because
codependent support group. So.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of enablers are obviously codependent, and there were these people who are drug addicted or have alcoholism. I mean, there's children of, what is it called? Adult children of alcoholics. They have a group.
Right. And Al-Anon has a group.
Al-Anon, right. So codependent groups.
Narcotics Anonymous, I'm sure, has a narcotics thing for.
They do, yeah.
Families, yeah.
So I mean,
I can't remember.
So, I mean, there's a lot of groups that focus on all that stuff, but to have a codependency group is so amazing. The 12-step program, I think, would be really good in this case.
You could probably find some books. You could probably look up some books too if you like to read. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And then Facebook probably also has some. I would be a little leery of Facebook, honestly, because everybody throws around the word codependency.
It's like the narcissism groups, Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation. So be careful, guys.
Right. And yeah, do your own education and stuff like that. If you know that you're codependent and you're just wanting to break through that, you can do it. I am absolute proof that you can do it. So
me too.
I was very codependent for a long time.
Right.
So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to live like that.
Sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. Yeah, it sucked for me too. So what is the mantra for this week?
It is, I've spoiled too many unworthy people with my time and attention to make them priorities in my life when they barely deserve it. I no longer cross oceans for people who would even jump over a puddle for me. It's not worth it, especially when there's people out there who would gladly hold my hand and cross the ocean with me.
That is powerful.
I know. Anyway. And all of us have heard the no longer cross oceans for people that won't jump puddles for you. But I didn't know there was a whole thing.
I know. And I love that. And when you read it all together, it's really powerful.
It's even more powerful.
And I want to say one thing before we leave. Angie and I were talking earlier. Well, there's relationships. If you have like a spiritual faith, a lot of times, like those relationships where a man is head of household, and we're just going to use like man and woman for this conversation because it's just the easiest way. But where you have like a man who's head of household and the woman, how do you want to put it, Angie? Because like the word submission is horrible. Like that's getting a huge bad rap too. That's another term that gets thrown around negatively. But we were talking about it, and that give and take that, a lot of people would see that as codependent, and it's not. And I don't know. No. I guess I just wanted to shout that out to people who have that type of
anybody. That can go with anybody in any type of relationship, friendship, or anything. Just it's a give and take relationship. It's not codependent to like, I call Kimberly. Kimberly is the first person that I call when something goes wrong. Does not mean I'm codependent on her.
No.
That means she's my best friend and I can
And ditto.
go to her whenever I need to. Right.
Right.
It's like, that's not being codependent on each other. It's just
Basically, I
relationship.
think like, and what I was trying to say with, and I'm just going to say Christian relationships, because
Right.
that's that. I think that'll make it more clear for people what I was trying to say. But basically, if you have a give and take and everyone's mutually happy and everyone is, like I said earlier, they choose to be in that relationship. That's how they choose to be in that relationship. Everybody's sense of self is healthy and there's clear communication, then you are not in a codependent relationship.
Right.
So I just wanted to throw that out there and make that clear. Because like we were saying, the terms nowadays, they're getting thrown around. Everybody's a narcissist.
Everybody's toxic. Everybody's
Yeah,
codependent.
yeah. And it's not true, guys. So we just need to be careful how we use those words and in which way we use them.
Right.
So we hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. And if you did get something out of it, please please share. We're having a hard time being seen. We were really happy that Stephanie Inman's episode about her daughter Rebecca got so many views because that did help a
Yes.
lot. Thank you, guys. Thank you to everybody who signed the petition. You have no
Absolutely.
idea
Thank
how
you.
much we appreciate you. And we're hoping to do an update on her situation. I guess some good news is around the corner. So we'll talk about that later. But follow us, subscribe, all that great stuff. All of our social media information will be announced in just a moment, so you know where to find us. Please join us next week for our final episode of the season. You don't want to miss that. I know. I can't believe we're going to be in season 5 soon.
I can't either.
So stick with us to hear that. And until then, thank you for listening to us. We appreciate every single one of you. And please remember that we are stronger together.
Mask up. Peace out.
Unified Through Chronic and Mental Illness can be found at anchor.fm/unified. There you can find all social media links as well as other ways to listen.